Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 491 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron, and I'm so thrilled that you are here with me today as I am talking to Josee Smith, who is a returnee. She was on episode 303, and we are talking about how to make it easy to show up for your writing. We're talking about tiny goals. We talk a lot about writing as a mother. And this is useful for everyone who struggles to fit writing into their day. So stick around for that. What's going on around here? Oh, I'm going to make this so short, y'all. I am on my way to the Philippines tonight. I thought I was leaving a day later than I was. I did not book these tickets. This is the trip that they're sending on because of my weird genetic condition. So somebody else booked these for me, and I remember what it was. I asked to go a day later. And then I just forgot that they said, no, we can't get you on that flight. We're going to put you a day earlier. But I didn't change it on my calendar. So I downloaded an app to keep track of the hotels and the flights and the this and the that because I like an app. And then I was looking at the app and it imported the flights and it said, does this look right to you? And I was supposed to give it a thumbs up. And so I read it. It was a really good check because I don't read things all the time, especially if I've forgotten that I haven't made the bookings. Because when I make a booking, I check it 15, 20, 100 times. This one, it surprised me. It said you have to leave 24 hours early. So I have had to move a lot of appointments and do a lot of stuff today. And I found out about this yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. So I've been struggling to fit everything into this week that needs to happen so that I can go to the Philippines. I will be working when I'm there, but really on my own writing. I'm not guaranteed good internet anywhere. So I'll just be hanging out and thinking and planning and treating it like a writing retreat, as well as a medical conference that I need to go to for 2 days. And that will be interesting. It will just be medical all the time. So that's what's going on around here. I'm very much looking forward to it. But right now, this very second, 3 hours before I leave to go stay at the airport hotel, because I must be in the airport at 3 a.m. And I don't want to worry about trying to go to sleep and then order a taxi because then I will not sleep. So I'm sleeping at the hotel at the airport. There's so much to do that I'm going to keep this. I was starting to say the anxiety is so high already. The anxiety will go away when I'm at the airport hotel. Won't really go away until I'm on the plane. And then I will be able to let it go. But until then, I'm just thinking about all the things I need to get done and all the packing I need to do and get out of here in 3 hours or so. So, very short intro. That's all we get. And I'm going to queue up the next podcast for next week. That'll be an even shorter intro. But let me tell you about Josee. All right, she was on episode 303. If you'd like to hear the first episode with her, it's fantastic. And Josee Smith is an indie author and book coach for working moms who want to finish the novel of their dreams. She achieved her childhood dream of finishing a novel and publishing it in 2021, and now she supports other writers with the same dream. As a new mom with a busy job, she understands the challenges of managing it all, and she also believes strongly that writing and creativity can help women feel like themselves again after the chaos of motherhood. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her husband, toddler, anxious dog, and semi-feral cat. Here is Josee. I absolutely love this interview. Here we go, and I'll see you on the flip side. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome you back to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
My name is Josee Smith, and my pronouns are she, her.
It's so nice to see you again, Josee. You were
Yes, you
here
too.
last, we were just looking that up in May 2022, so a little bit under 3 years ago, and we were talking about launching a writing career. That was episode number 303, if people want to go back and listen to that. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening since then?
Yeah. So yeah, I wrote some books, published some books. I think I'm now having to, I'd like forgotten the exact time when we last spoken, so I'm now going back in my memory. I had a cozy mystery series out, and I write under a pen name, so those are Josephine Smith. You can find those books.
Hmm.
And I believe I had like at the end of 2021 had self-published the sixth one. No, 2022. I think 20, the end of 2020. So I was like, that seems way too fast. That's not right. No, I was in progress May 2022 of publishing the six books in that series.
Yeah.
And the last one came out at the end of 2022. Yeah, that's the timeline. So yeah, I finished I so with Cozy Mystery, those series can go on. I've seen like 50 books, which is insane to me how you could
Yeah.
like be interested in a character enough, but like readers love it, writers love that, like we just
Yeah.
love the series. So
How did
it
you
can
feel
go
about
on.
it personally?
When I find a series I really like and I'm into, I definitely, like, as a reader, I'm like, yes, please. I would love to just like keep
How
following
about
this
as a writer?
person along. So, right, as a writer, I reached a point where I had put out the sixth one. And even I think before I got to that point, I kind of started to think about like, okay, I like this series, I like these characters. I was sort of starting to kind of wrap up the romance arc a little bit. And so it kind of
Mhm.
felt like and I had some with that last book planned, I had some family stuff that was going to come in. So to me, it kind of felt like, okay, this could be a natural sort of pausing point, like a soft close is how I refer to it to
Mm.
myself, knowing that I could always come back to it. But I also at that time kind of felt like, okay, I learned a lot about my writing process, writing cozy mystery, publishing, like all of these things. I'm now interested in maybe going off in kind of a different direction. So yeah, I think as a writer, and I do also actually feel with like getting back into any new, I mean, you can talk about like what I've actually been writing, but like getting back into a new cozy mystery series, I can see myself maybe, I don't know, doing a little bit more planning of like the overarching series to think about, okay, how could I keep this up for like
Hmm.
multiple books, more than just six, more, getting into like maybe double digits, just because I know readers love that. Like I have readers who still ask me now, like, am I going to write more in that series? Um, so yeah, I think I just mentally like wasn't, I was just like, I'm just gonna get these books out. I got the first one out, the rest kind of just came out, and I didn't really put too much like thought or intention behind it. And then was kind of like, so like that series was set in Washington State, which is where I'm from, but I live in California. And I was like, I really want to write like a beachy mystery series. Like
Hmm.
that's what I'm really feeling now. So my interest and taste just kind of changed as I was going. And so yeah, it just kind of worked out where I was like, it's things are kind of wrapping up in some of the storylines. We're resolving some of the things in her past that had been hinted at previously and now are kind of being wrapped up in these last couple of books. And I'm interested in maybe thinking about like, what might I do differently in a new series? What would be the same? Like what could kind of change? And so I considered that sort of a soft close of that series. The last one came out at the end of 2022. And that I did start working on a new mystery series set in California. And I do feel like I tried to put a little more, like, I just know more about the genre, know more about
Yeah.
kind of my process. And so I try to put a little bit more like intention behind it of like, okay, how can I have maybe little mini arcs between like several, like three books? The first three books are kind of each has its own mystery, but focused on, something overarching. And then the next set can be kind of overarching. So I did a little bit of that going into 2023, and did write the first book in that series. Timelines are now getting to me because the other major thing that happened is I got pregnant. That's kind of like one of the reasons why we're talking. And so I'm
Which
now
is
like,
a major thing. Yeah.
yeah, so I did finish a book at some point. It's like written, it was edited by my editor.
You also finished a baby.
Yes, and I finished the baby. Yeah, all of that kind of happened around 2023. I think maybe I had written the first book in 2022, had it edited, and like was working on the second one, and then got pregnant, and then
Hmm.
all of that sort of roller coaster. Here we are now. Here we are now. Yeah, I can go into that because I feel like it kind of just naturally like it's been a while since we've chatted. So
Well, what I am really interested in talking to you about is that you have been working with other moms who want to write the novel of their dreams. And I kind of would love to pick your brain about how it felt to go from being a person who did not have children to being a person who's pregnant and then had a kid and still trying to get the writing done. Like how on earth I could barely do it with a dog and kittens, you know?
yeah, no,
I always think that parents, all parents of all genders, but especially moms, I don't know how you do it. Like, oh, tell me.
yeah, no, it's been a journey for sure. Yeah, it's and that thing that I don't know if I fully believed that like mom brain was a thing, but it like absolutely is a thing. Like my memory's
Mhm.
just shot, and I'm like now having to go back in time and trying to recall like when did things happen. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I got pregnant, and that was definitely a point where just from like an energy perspective, my creativity was just kind of sapped. I didn't I felt like I was kind of putting some pressure on myself to like try to keep up the
Mm.
writing when I was like trying to grow a baby, and I was like, this is just not what I want to do with my
Mhm.
creativity. I do have a newsletter, and so I did kind of like try to keep them sort of updated that like I was still writing. I don't think I shared that I was pregnant. Maybe I did and said I was taking a break. I don't know, but I like kind of let them know what was happening and like did sort of pause on that a little bit and just tried to like relieve some of the like Josephine pressure from myself.
Mhm.
And then kind of simultaneously started to get into book coaching and starting to help other writers with their writing. And I didn't know that moms was what I wanted to specifically focus on when I first got into. I worked with Author Accelerator, Jen Nash's company. I went through her
Ah, she's great.
certification program. Highly
Yeah.
recommend it. And knew that I wanted to help other writers. That was something that was a desire for me really early on in my writing. I think when I published the first book and started to think like, oh, this could be a career. I could earn like a living from it. I could do it full time at some point in the future. I immediately was like, oh, I'd also love to help other people do this as well. So the book
Mhm.
coaching just kind of happened to fit into my life while I was pregnant and big, going through that certification program, thinking about how to help writers building a business like is creative, but it just was like working my brain in a different way than trying to
Mhm.
write. And so it was a little easier to have that be my focus for 2023. And then I had my son and, had to figure out how to like be a mom and do all the things that go into being a mom. The newborn stage, those first like 3 months, not my favorite. Not ones that I like, necessarily want to go back to. It's just you've got this like screaming thing that you're like, I don't know what you need. I'm trying my best to keep you alive. And we're like trying to figure out how to communicate. And like it definitely gets
I
easier.
literally yesterday ran into a friend of mine who has a 5-month-old, and I ran into her on the street. She was leaving the thrift store. She'd gone out thrift shopping, and she was like, "I'm going home. I can't do it. I can't. I can't." And I just took the baby and I took the stroller and I said, "Goodbye. I'm going to go on my errands, and I'll text you every stop where I am, and then you come get me and the baby when you're done." But like she couldn't even just go like spend a minute at
Yeah.
the thrift store, and I don't know how you all like, and she doesn't shower, and yes, so
The showering. Oh God, yeah. The things that you're a great friend. I will say that's very, very kind of you. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, you're just thrown into this like completely new world where you have this thing that like you're supposed to take care of and you're like not sleeping. It's just like all of this stuff. So yeah, those like early months were definitely hard. I was able to have time off from work, which was great because then I could focus on him. And then I just kind of reached a point where after probably like, yeah, by 2 to 3 months or so, we got into a routine. I kind of knew what to do. I figured out like how to breastfeed. I figured out how to get them to take naps. And they do
Mhm.
sleep a lot. We also have a good sleeper, so
Mm.
not all
Mhm.
babies sleep a lot. They both sleep a lot, not necessarily well, but then we also kind of lucked out and had a decent sleeper. So I did have
Mhm.
time. I found I had some time on my hands kind of throughout the day. Um, but I kind of like got into this point where I started to not totally feel like myself. Like obviously things had changed completely, and those early weeks and months are such a like whirlwind that I didn't have a moment to like pause and kind of figure out what was going on with me. And then once we got to this good routine where I felt like, okay, I know how to keep him alive, keep him relatively happy, like we're figuring it out. I realized that, he would go down for a nap and then I would sort of feel like just adrift in our house, just kind of like
Mhm.
floating around, not really sure what to do with myself because I didn't have my job to worry about. I'd gone through the book coaching certification and like had that on my mind, but also was like, I'm not going to try to build a business I've got this little baby at home. Like, I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. But I just like didn't quite feel like myself. And was just really kind of like, what is going on here? What's happening? And so I turned to my journal. I think I've got a like
Mm.
morning pages practice. I don't think I was keeping it up too much at that time. Maybe like occasionally popping in, but I was like, that's always worked for me in the past when things feel
Mhm.
kind of off. Just like sit down, brain dump, see what's happening. So I sat down and started writing out like what's going on, what's happening, what am I feeling? And I realized that I knew what I was doing with him. I kind of. I didn't like, I wasn't like a pro at being a mom now, but I knew our routine. I knew kind of what he needed from me. You know, I felt good about that. I didn't have a job that I had to do. And so I had this other time where, you know, he was napping. He didn't need as much from me during those specific times. And I didn't quite know what to do with myself during that time because it had been so long since I'd had like free time for myself where I was just kind of like, yeah, what do I want to be doing here? And
Mhm.
so I literally had to sit down and think about, okay, when he's napping, what would I like to do? Read a book was like one of the first things on the list. Watch an episode of TV. Like I had to remind
Mhm.
myself of these things that I love to do because it just had like flown out of my head. I feel like though, then thinking about it, I'm like, I think I was just in survival mode, just like trying my best to like hold on
Yeah,
and like,
definitely.
just show up every day. And I, yeah, had forgotten the things that like brought me joy, that made me happy, that, you know, were things I wanted to give my attention to. And so I like wrote down some things and was like, oh yeah, I should like watch a TV show when he's napping. That makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense. But then writing was something that popped up on the list, like getting back into my writing practice. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And so I, you know, kind of slowly tried to figure out like, well, what do I want that to look like, especially at this particular time when, you know, I wasn't working. He was still needing a lot from me. And we were still kind of trying to figure out like what are we doing together? But yeah, I realized that I wanted to get back into my writing routine and then spent, you know, that was probably 2 or 3 months into his life, and I've spent the time more than a year since then figuring out like how do I have like what does my writing routine look like now? How does my identity as a writer look like now? I'm also a mom. How do all of these things kind of fit together? But it was an interesting moment of like not really feeling like myself. And then when I paused and asked myself like what I wanted, what I needed, writing was something that popped back up.
I love
Very
that you did that.
interesting.
So, as you know, as you well know, the show is about writing process. What does being a writer today mean to you in the life you live with your son?
Yeah. I think and it's funny because it's also changed coming into like so he turned a year in August, coming into the new year, like it's also changed a little bit from what it was last year. So I think the things that kind of the big undercurrent is just like doing the thing that makes me happiest with my writing and also trying to lower the pressure on myself. I feel like those are like the pressure especially is a big thing that like just in being pregnant and being a mom, I just want to do what I can to be like nice to myself through this whole process.
So
But then
there's
also
so
really
those are
focusing on
oh sorry. I was
yeah,
just saying that
just
those are two things. So
yes,
let's talk
yeah.
about the first one and then the second one because I think they're both so important. So lowering the pressure, but also doing the thing that makes you the happiest in
Yes.
writing. What is that?
Yeah,
Tell me about
so so once I had that realization that, you know, I wanted to get back into my writing, I went back to that cozy mystery series that I had started previously, and I think I'd written, I was starting the second book. Maybe I had some of the first draft written, honestly, don't remember at this point.
it.
But I had the series that I had started that, you know, I wanted to get back into because I was like, oh, this could be something that at some point in the future I can publish again. My readers will like it. Great.
Hmm.
But I, it wasn't quite flowing. It wasn't quite like moving or going in the way that I wanted it to when I did have, you know, 10, 15 minutes a day to actually sit down and work on it. The story just wasn't, I don't know, it didn't quite feel like mine, even though I'd written the
Hmm.
first book. I think I'd written it, you know, a year previously or 6 months
And
before.
you
And
were a
so I didn't
whole
feel
different
like
person.
yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
feel totally into the story. It didn't totally feel like mine. And I realized that I actually wanted to go in a different direction. But I felt some like pressure from these readers who were not putting any pressure on me. But I was like, well, they love cozy mystery. I want to give them that. And I
Yeah.
realized like that's not actually what I want to do right now. When I think about, you know, how I can make it easy to show up in my writing, it's by working on something that I'm really excited about and that feels really like good to work on right now. So
Hmm.
that resulted in me pivoting into working on something totally different. Um, so yeah, all of 2024, I worked on still a mystery, but like a witchy mystery.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, because I was just like, I really like mysteries in general. Like just I feel like anything I write, there's gonna be a dead body. But I was also interested in like how do we kind of make this like a little bit magical.
Yeah.
I feel like I was reading a lot of like fantasy last year as well, so it definitely ended up turning into more fantasy than I kind of intended.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just was like if I'm going to spend this time, when I'm not with my son, and then I also was going back to work after a certain point as well, and so had even more like limited time to work on my writing. I wanted to do something that I was really excited about, and that happened to be this witchy mystery that I spent all of last year focused on. The thing that's now shifted as we move into 2025 is that, and we're filming this at the beginning of the year, is that as the year ended, I started to get the itch to go back to that cozy mystery. Now that I'm saying that, I wonder if that's just my own like need to hop around and like, will I ever finish anything? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm avoiding something. I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't like editing, so maybe the edits are what I'm
Just the fact
avoiding.
that that's come to you as you're talking is a useful thing to think about as you move forward,
Yes.
because we can
Yes.
always, come up with the next thing that we should be working on. And because the thing that we were working on is scaring us because we have to take the next step.
Yes,
Right. Yeah.
yes, exactly. But I do think that this pull back to the Cozy Mystery series that I've been working on previously was also just like the Witchy Mystery. I really enjoyed it. And I mean, it's still like in progress. I will definitely go back to it at some point, but I don't know, maybe it's a book that like it's a big, what I want, the vision I have for it maybe feels really big. And I know that it's
Mhm.
going to take some time and effort. And I don't totally have the space for it right now to like really put the time and effort into making it into that ideal vision. I think maybe that is the thing that was kind of happening at the end of last year. Whereas this cozy mystery, I was reading a lot of cozy mystery last year. I think that feels a little more like, I don't know, like I can get my arms around it. I can like understand
Yeah.
what I'm doing. I know this genre very well. And I found myself just like kind of missing those characters, wanting to get into something a little bit lighter as well. The Witchy Mystery had some like relationships that were like a little bit like family relationships that were a little heavier, and I could like kind of feel that like weight on me a little bit.
Hmm.
So that might be also, I think, kind of part of the motivation as well, like wanting to get into something that didn't have that same kind of weight. Still has like relationships and family stuff to sort of work through in the Cozy Mystery series, but doesn't feel as intense as I think that other book had felt by the end of the year.
It also sounds like doing that is moving toward that second point of lowering the pressure on yourself as
Hmm.
well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so for people, and specifically parents, and probably even more specifically mothers, can you talk to us about how you coach or help people lower that pressure on themselves? Because it is just so hard. It's writing is the thing that we want to do, that we feel so called to do, and it doesn't feel like a low pressure situation. How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was figuring out how do I make it easy to show up to my writing? Like I have limited time to do
Yes.
it. I want to do it. I want to try to do it regularly. How do I make it easy to show up?
This is for everybody, y'all. I'm writing, I'm
Yes,
taking
yeah,
notes.
yeah, for everyone. How do I make it easy? As well as like how do I not feel bad about the fact that my writing, this is maybe specifically for the parents, how do I not feel bad about the fact that my writing
Mm,
looks different than it did before having kids?
yes,
That
thank
was
you.
also a really big issue for me at the beginning of 2024, is like wanting to have that same, kind of I'm writing every single day, I'm feeling good about it, I'm able to put in, a couple hours on the weekends, like all this stuff that's just out the window. My weekends are just no longer my own. I want to spend them completely with my son because
Mhm.
I work during the week. Like I want to have that time with him. And it did take me a little while to not get frustrated with myself because I couldn't write on the weekends, or I only had so much time because of my day job, during the week. It took some time to yeah, take that pressure off of myself. It's like, okay, if I feel bad about the fact that I missed writing today because we got sick for the sixth time in the year,
Mhm.
then that's just gonna like make it less likely for me to show up for my writing the next day.
Mhm.
And so I kind of had to figure out like what can I do to make it not mean anything that I've missed a day of writing because of these outside, things outside of my control. How do I make it easy to show up and not get frustrated with myself, not like say that I have to kind of do it any certain way or that it has to be how it was before. And yeah, what can I do to like bring some of the joy back into the writing? So my big thing now is just setting little tiny little goals for ourselves. I think I started the year with like 10 minutes every weekday. I bumped
Mhm.
it up to 20. I'm a little afraid to go over 20 minutes, honestly, which is like a whole
20
other
is
thing.
perfect. Like I do
Yeah, it
15,
feels,
but 20 is like
yeah,
ideal. Yeah.
it feels pretty good. I'm happy with it. Uh, yeah, and so that was the way that was like, okay, yeah, 20 minutes, I can get in, get some writing done. I do find that I think I've gotten it gets very like concentrated in such a
Mhm.
small amount of time because I've had people say to me like that's not nearly enough time. Like when I tell other people that they should start with like smaller goals, or like that's not nearly enough time. But I think we just put I don't know, like if we, especially if you haven't written something before and you're like following the, like author out there who's like, I write an hour every single day, you try to do that, it's just not going to happen, especially
Mhm.
for parents, especially for moms. And then you're more than likely going to feel bad about the fact that you couldn't hit this goal that's like out the window too hard for you. Like, why was that
Mhm.
even doable in the first place? And then because you feel bad, you're not going to try again the next day. And it just becomes this like cycle of us just feeling bad about ourselves and not actually writing
Yeah.
versus acknowledging the reality that we're in and acknowledging the fact that like we only have so much time and instead if we could figure out how to make it easy to show up and write by writing 5, 10, 20 minutes a day and building up that habit, building up that self-trust, that consistency, all of that, that then creates your writing routine. I think it creates that identity of a writer
Mhm.
because you're showing up and writing. I
And it
think
gets words done. It gets
yes, exactly,
so
yeah,
many
yes,
words done without
yes.
even trying last year and without even hitting half of the days I wanted to sit down and write for 20 minutes. I wrote almost 60,000 words of
Mm,
just from fun little 15-minute pieces that,
yeah,
were outside my regular writing or working hours. I mean, it just
yeah,
adds up because of that
it adds up.
concentration. Okay, so that is a fabulous tip that doing the tiny little
Yeah.
goals that mean something. They're not BS. People, I just had a person respond on a YouTube comment recently who said, I can't believe you said I could just write for 20 minutes. That's freeing me. I'm like, yes, you actually can. That's
Yeah.
all. Try it. 15, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What other little tips or tools or tricks are you using to make the it easier to show up?
Yeah. I think the writer identity is another big one. I think I was lucky in that I had a writing, I had written, I put books
Yeah.
out, I had this identity as an author. That definitely was a benefit for me because when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my time after my son was born, when I, figured out, okay, I've got this new mom identity. What else? How else am I kind of identifying? It was easy for me to kind of slip back into that writer identity. But I think even if that's not something that like maybe it's a new thing for you or hasn't been an identity, I think still just acknowledging or like understanding the fact that like our identities are what cause us to act in certain ways. And so if you can work on building that identity, it makes it easier to show up and write because you are just someone who writes, even if it's not for an hour every single day, you still show up and write. I think setting the small goals and building that consistent habit helps to work on the identity because if you have a month of where you wrote more days than you didn't, like that means you're a writer. Like the act of
Mhm.
writing means you're a writer. Maybe you're not publishing, maybe you're not sharing it with anyone doesn't matter, you're still a writer. And if you can hold on to that, I think it helps to with like prioritization because you can say to other people, you can say to your
Mhm.
partner, to your other family members, to your kids if they're maybe old enough, not my 18-month-old, it's not gonna listen to me when I say I'm a writer, but you can say to people like this is an important part of my life. I want to carve out time for it. And there's a good chance that the people who care about you in your life are gonna respect that and try to do what they can to help support that side of you. So I think yeah, working on getting into that writer identity is also very key because then even if you miss, like I was sick, my son and I were both sick all of last week. I don't think I did any writing. Yeah, it's all a blur at this point. But even because I didn't do any writing, I'm like, well, I'm just going to write some more this week because I'm a writer. That's what I do. Like it
Right.
just kind of happens.
Right.
I think people can doubt that identity a lot. They feel like they haven't like, they don't, it's not justified enough or they haven't done enough writing to be considered a writer. I don't know, just like no one has to know. Like if you want to identify yourself as a writer, no one has to know about it. That can just be for yourself. This was actually something really big I had to do when I first got serious about my writing in 2020 and like had the aspiration to self-publish. That was an identity I had to work on of like
Mhm.
just I think even writing out to myself, like in my morning pages, like I'm a writer, I'm someone who writes, and it was hard at first. It was definitely like I felt like an imposter. I felt like it wasn't my thing to own. But I think if you can just work on telling yourself that first and then build up the habit of actually showing up and writing, yeah, you'll probably end up with a book after a year and
Yeah.
then you like have something to show for the fact that like, yeah, you are a writer because you
And
finished this thing.
it's so funny that we have imposter syndrome around that, and that it is so hard for so many people to say. But it's just like anything else. Like I also can say that I am a cross stitcher because I am a person who sometimes cross stitches, and it never leaps into my mind to say, "Oh, can I really call myself that? Am I allowed?" Yeah, you know what? I'm a cross stitcher because I cross stitch. I'm a knitter because I knit.
Yes.
I'm a walker because I walk, and I'm a writer because I write. And it's that easy. And I think the
Yeah.
maybe the scary part of it is that some people say, well, I haven't written enough. I haven't done enough. And there's no enough. There's just, did you
Mm.
write in your morning pages? Do you want to write tomorrow? You're a writer. Okay, these are so fabulous. I know we're running out of time here, but I really wanted to make sure to ask you um, about, and this is something that came from the email that you sent to me, um, why why people that you might be working with, coaching, why their writing dreams still matter and why it's not selfish to wish to be a writer. Why it's not selfish to be one.
Yeah, I think especially for moms and parents, but especially moms, we're told so many things about like who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do for our kids, what we're supposed to sacrifice. Pregnancy is a major sacrifice. And yeah, we're told all of these things about what we're supposed to be as moms. And I think it can erase that side of ourselves that is something separate
Mm.
from being a mom. And I absolutely think that you can be multiple things. Like, I don't think you have to give up everything for your kids. I love my son to the moon and back. Like, he's my new little favorite person. But I also have so many other things about me that are interesting and exciting and that I want to be able to focus on. And so I think just like baseline, I think if you are drawn to writing, it means you're meant to be a writer. And so, even if you're a mom, even if you're a parent, even if you have other responsibilities, other things going on, if writing is calling to you, that means that you should put energy and attention towards it. And it shows like going after that dream, me going after my childhood dream of finishing a book, it out into the world, getting readers. That shows to myself that my dreams are important, that I can make a difference with the books that I write and that readers love and they tell me about. It also shows to my son that, like, hey, mom went after something that was important to her, and this is how she spends her energy, and like she's making a difference in the world in this particular way. And so even though, yeah, I'm, not spending all of my free time with him because sometimes some of that time is spent writing, maybe that can feel a little selfish or I can feel maybe guilty because I'm not with him all of the time. I also know that by like pouring into myself, giving myself something that's really important to me, allows me to show up better for him as a mom because I have like nourished myself first. And it also shows to him, like, yeah, you should go after your dreams too. Like, I feel like we were like, a lot of us were told as kids, like, writing is not possible, going after these like creative
Oh
careers is
yeah.
not possible. And I want him to be like, yeah, I could write a book too, because my mom wrote a book. Like that's just like, I love that idea so much. And so I just think, yeah, I think if you're drawn to writing, like, because you could be drawn to doing anything in the world. I could want to go to space, and I clearly don't because I'm not putting any energy towards going to space. I want to write novels, and so that's where all of my energy and attention
Yeah.
goes to, along with all the other things that like the responsibilities that I have to do in life. But I think if that is something that has been that little seed inside of you, I think it's so vital to nourish that little seed and to encourage it and to build it up because it not only like makes you a better person, just sort of showing into the world by nourishing yourself in that way. It also then teaches your kids, it teaches their other family members, the people who are important to you, like what is possible when we go after our dreams and like try to accomplish something amazing. So yeah, if you want to
Which
write,
is
you should write.
it's like the opposite. It's the opposite of selfish. It's
Yeah.
it's um
Yeah.
it's giving. It is generous. All right. If somebody wanted to work with you as a coach, as somebody who would be inspired by you and helped by you, how would they reach you? Where would they find you?
Yeah, so you can come find me on my website. It's josiesmithbookcoach.com, and that's
Josee
Josie
has two E's.
Josee.
Yeah.
I have a 12-month coaching program where I take writers from really kind of wherever they're at in the process because people come to me in all sorts of different ways.
Mhm.
But from like beginning to end, we're going to finish that book. We're going to maybe even figure out what you want to do afterwards. You're going to get feedback, support, accountability, all the things to just like make the process smoother, faster, easier, going through a very long time together. So you can come find me on my website to like learn more about the package and what's all kind of in the coaching program. I'm also very active on Instagram, Josee Smith Book Coach. I share a lot about my own writing process and like challenges that I'm facing, plus tips and things that have worked for me that could help others as well. I think, yeah, I writing has been so important for me as a mom to have this other identity. I really want to help other moms kind of realize like what else they can do, what other dreams are important for them to nourish and put out there.
I love that you are doing this, and I love that that is your specific focus, and you have just fallen into this perfect place for you to be. Thank you for being on the show. It is always such a delight to talk to you, and I'm just so happy that you are doing this, Josee.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was delightful.